بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم إنا نسألك علما ينفعنا ويرفعنا. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا واسعا وعملا متقبلا وشفاء من كل داء. وبعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Today inshallah we'll be reading we'll be moving into the fourth juz and basically be completing Surah Al Imran. So in terms of my portion of recitation, it talks about the people of the book. ليسوا سواء من أهل الكتاب أمة قائمة يتلون آيات الله آناء الليل وهم يسجدون. So there's a portion of the people of the book which here would refer to the Jews and the Christians as well. That was the context in terms of the verse. Previously Allah was talking about the Jews in particular, but then he goes on to mention Ahlul Kitab, which includes the Jews and the Christians as well. You find that from amongst the Jews and the Christians they are good people, but like everywhere else you get good people and you get bad people. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts talking about the bad from amongst the people of the book, and he issues a command further on. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا بطانة من دونكم لا يألونكم خبالا. The word bitana, you have this clothing, so you have the inside of the clothing, so that inside of the clothing is called bitana. Another way is also, if you have like an item of clothing, so the inside is called bitana. Another one is that the clothing that you wear underneath other clothing is also called bitana. So it's unique also that, like especially in the winter time when it's cold, then your undergarments are very important. For example, you have long johns; those are very important, and it's actually more important than your outer garments, because that's what keep you warm. And then the Prophet ﷺ uniquely talks about the Ansar. He says, Al-Ansaru shi'arun wan-nasu ditharun. So shi'ar is another word also for like either the inside or the undergarments, and dithar would basically be the outer garments. So you can understand now what a praise that is for the Ansar. It also talks about the significance of, many times we want to be the dithar, the outer face, but the shi'ar is actually more important. Like people who say work, in the background, they're not really seen, but their work is so important. The Ansar may not have had that sort of like a claim. If you look from one perspective in terms of leadership, the leadership would lie with the Quraysh. But in order to have leadership, you need to have leadership is suspended upon something. And that suspension was, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it was by the support of the Ansar. The Prophet ﷺ himself, his entire mission in terms of the apparent support that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have, it was based on the help of the Ansar. So that لا تتخذوا بطانة من دونكم, those around you. So it's very relevant to us also because we are a Muslim minority in a non-Muslim majority. So لا تتخذوا بطانة من دونكم لا يألونكم خبالا, but there's a condition. The word khabala means corruption, or it means the Arabic term is fasad. So fasad can translate as corruption. So la ya'lunakum khabala. They don't leave any stone unturned that will result in your corruption. In other words, not in your well-being, but the opposite of your well-being. So those from around us. So this, waddu ma anitum, they hope that you will be placed in such a circumstance that causes you difficulty. And waddu ma anittum, anat is basically ta'ab, but ta'ab shadid. It refers to when you, it causes you difficulty, but what type of difficulty? It causes you tiredness, but what type of tiredness? Almost like a debilitating. Waddu ma anittum, qad badatil baghdha'u min afwahim. What they say is, baghdha is hatred, وَمَا تُخْفِي صُدُورُهُمْ أَكْبَرُ, but that which they conceal within the chest are greater than it. So this obviously brings to mind the whole question of, we are a Muslim minority, we're living among non-Muslims, the majority. How do we deal with them? So there's many verses in the Holy Quran that talks to this particular point. I just want to read through the other verse that comes in Surah Al-Mujadilah or Surah Al-Mujadalah. They say it in one of two ways. And here's a very important verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about. لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله. You won't find a people that believe in Allah in the last day, but what do they have? Yuwaduna. that they have love, yuwaduna man hada Allah wa Rasul, those who challenge Allah and His Messenger. So now what happens is, here the scholars raise a very important point. There's a distinct difference between, here mawadda actually means mawadda, it actually means wood, so to have love. So love is something, as Muslims, it is reserved for Allah and His Messenger and the believers. It begs the question now, so when we engage with other people, when we engage with non-Muslims, on what basis do we engage with them? We don't engage with mawadda, because mawadda is reserved for your believers. But we engage with them on the basis of أن تبرهم وتقسطوا إليهم. إقساط, in other words, justice. We are fair with people. We are fair with people. We are fair with people, and how does the verse go? Tabarruhum and bir. Now, you know, bir is what Allah tells you, you know, when you deal with your parents. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about you being good to your parents. Birrul walidain. So in other words, it's not just an entry-level form of goodness to another. It is a higher form of being good. So that's, but it doesn't go to the idea of love. The problem with love is, once you get emotionally engaged and you grant that to somebody, what happens? Then that is somewhat, what do you call it, reciprocated, and you become affected thereby. So it's important for you to know where to place your love. You don't place your love in a way that love is going to be reciprocated and you're going to become affected thereby, and you place it in a negative place. At the end of the day, that love is reserved for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq. Here they say, there's one kitab written, وَمِنْ هَذَا الصِّنْفِ أَهْلُ الذِّمَّةِ وَقَدْ بَيَّنَ شِهَابُ الدِّينِ الْقَرَافِي في الفرق التاسع عشر بعد المئة مسائل الفرق بين البر والمودة. في الفرق التاسع عشر بعد المئة. In the التاسع عشر 19 بعد المئة 119, he mentioned مسائل الفرق بين البر والمودة. There's so many differences between being good to somebody, being very good to somebody, and having love in your heart for that particular, person. You know, we don't like to think and talk about things like this, right? Because we like to feel that there must be mawadda in everything. If a person gets married, it could very well be that, you know, that mawadda that they initially had, it wanes somewhat. Love is an emotion that, you know, can grow, it can wane also. But the problem is that when a person loses love, and then and what he says now, he can be unjust with the person. No, if it's your wife, you must still be bir with her. You must still be very, very, very good with her. Whether you have that emotional feeling of love with you or not, you must still maintain that. And therefore Allah وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Allah talks about that. Initially you get married as mawadda, you don't have to think about it. But if that feeling wanes, what? Rahmah. There's another feeling. So it's a whole it's a whole bouquet of feelings, emotional feelings, that you should actually have in order to sustain a relation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah grant us a tawfiq, inshallah. It takes a lot of reading, but that's basically the khulasa of that particular point. And I think it's important, because every now and then, because we're living amongst non-Muslims, we have this particular question. All the other hadith about, being good to your neighbor, no distinction is made in terms of religion and so forth. But it doesn't mean you're good to your neighbor that, it's a sense of mawadda. The mawadda is reserved for believers. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.